My name is Claire Matthews, and the night my husband told me, "You should move out and live somewhere else, I need peace," I had just finished wiring $85,000 to cover his family's debt. I remember standing in our kitchen, the same one I'd remodeled with my own savings. The smell of burnt coffee filled the air. His mother sat at the counter, swirling her tea like she owned the place. When he said those words, she smiled. That small, smug smile. Then she added, "We never liked you anyway." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even pack. I just looked at both of them, nodded once, and walked out the door. It was almost midnight. The street was quiet, and I could still hear her laugh through the window. That was the moment I decided silence would be my revenge. We'd been married 10 years. I met David when he was still trying to keep his father's small construction business alive. Back then, he had this charm, the kind that made you think he'd never hurt you. I helped him rebuild everything piece by piece. I was the one who handled the finances, the taxes, the calls from the bank. His parents were reckless with money. They borrowed from everyone and paid no one back. When the collectors came, David promised, "Just this once, Claire. I'll pay you back as soon as the company turns around." That once turned into years. By last spring, his parents owed over $85,000. Their house was about to be taken. I stepped in again. I pulled from my retirement fund, the one I'd been saving since my 20s, and cleared their debt. When the confirmation email came through, I showed it to David. He barely glanced at it. No thank you, no hug, no relief, just that distant look people give you when they've already decided to move on. The next week, his mother moved in temporarily. Within a month, she was rearranging the house, the fridge, even our bedroom curtains. She looked me dead in the eye while saying, "David likes things simple. You make everything complicated." I started sleeping in the guest room. And then came the night of peace. I'd just come home from a 12-hour shift at the hospital. He was sitting on the couch laptop, open, scrolling through listings for homes in his name. He didn't even look up when I walked in. He just said it flat cold rehearsed. "You should move out and live somewhere else. I need peace." I stared at him for maybe 3 seconds. It's strange how in moments like that, time slows down. You start noticing small things, the faint buzz of the refrigerator, the way his mother's ring caught the light, the sound of your own heartbeat. I didn't say a word. I just walked to the hallway, grabbed my car keys, and left. No suitcase, no note, no noise. I drove aimlessly for a while. Ended up at a cheap motel off Route 29, the kind with buzzing lights and vending machines that eat your quarters. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, repeating his words over and over. I need peace. Funny thing is, that night was the first time I actually felt it. The next morning, I called an old friend, Evelyn. We'd worked together years ago in finance before I switched to healthcare. She was the calm type, always thinking 3 steps ahead. When she heard what happened, she didn't gasp, didn't comfort. She just asked one question. "Whose name is on the house deed, Claire?" I told her it was his, but the loan that refinanced it 2 years ago, that was under my signature, my income, my credit. Evelyn paused. Then she said quietly, "Then you might not be as powerless as you think." I didn't fully understand what she meant. Not yet. But something about her tone made me sit up straight. That evening I went back to the house, not inside, just parked across the street. The lights were on in every room. His mother was in the living room, laughing at something on TV. David sat beside her, scrolling through his phone. He looked relaxed, like I was already gone from his life. I stayed there for almost an hour just watching the windows. No tears, no anger, just an odd sense of stillness like I was standing outside my own past. Then I started my car and drove away. People think revenge begins with rage. It doesn't. It begins with clarity. That night I opened my laptop and pulled up every document tied to that house, the refinancing papers, the email records, the payments. My name was everywhere. My money had saved them more times than I could count, and somehow they thought they could just push me out and keep everything. They were wrong. I didn't know how yet, but I knew this much: I wasn't done. The morning after I left, I drove to a storage unit in town. I had opened it months ago quietly when I started feeling that things weren't right. Inside were a few boxes, my nursing certifications, old tax files, and a folder labeled Personal Accounts. I didn't even know why I'd kept it separate back then. Maybe part of me already knew I'd need a clean start. I rented a small apartment above a bakery. The air smelled like warm bread every morning, and for the first time in years, I slept without hearing someone criticize how I loaded the dishwasher. The landlord, an old veteran named Bill, gave me a deal because I agreed to help his wife with her blood pressure checks. It was quiet, anonymous, exactly what I needed. Evelyn called a few days later. I looked at the mortgage record, she said. You were the primary guarantor on the refinancing loan, not just a co-signer. That matters. I didn't say much. I was still raw, half numb, still trying to figure out how you go from being a wife to being erased. She paused. Claire, if he defaults or transfers ownership without your consent, that's fraud. That word hung in the air, fraud. I didn't feel vindictive yet, just tired. I don't want to ruin anyone, Evelyn. Her voice stayed calm. You don't have to. Just protect what's yours. For the next few weeks I worked, my shifts came home and built small routines. I started walking every evening. Sometimes I'd pass families sitting on their porches, kids playing with sprinklers. It reminded me that peace doesn't come from silence, it comes from not having to defend yourself anymore. But peace didn't last long. One afternoon, I got a call from a joint credit card company asking to verify a large purchase furniture, $200. Delivery address, our old home. I froze. Then I laughed bitterly. They were refurnishing the house with my line of credit. I told the rep. That account's closed effective immediately. Later that night, I poured myself a small glass of wine and stared at the bank app on my phone. My name was still attached to everything, the house loan, the taxes, the insurance. He hadn't bothered to remove me. He just assumed I'd walk away and never look back. So I didn't scream. I didn't call him. I started collecting information. Every bill, every transaction, every note from the bank. Evelyn helped me pull records cleanly, legally. She said, if this ever goes to court, you'll want a timeline. It felt strange keeping track of a life I no longer lived, but there was something steadying about it. 3 weeks passed before David reached out. A text simple as that, you left some jewelry. I'll drop it off if you want. I replied, no need. Keep it. He didn't respond. The next day, he posted a photo on Facebook. Him and his mother smiling in front of the house. The caption read, finally peaceful. That word again, peaceful. It almost made me laugh. That evening, I met Evelyn for coffee. She slid a folder across the table, my refinance documents. You might want to read page 12, she said. It was the clause about payment protection. If I had cleared more than 50% of the outstanding balance before the final signature, the collateral ownership could be reassigned. $85,000 was well over 50%. I looked at her. You're telling me the house, she nodded, could legally fall under your claim if you press it. I sat there holding the paper, trying to steady my breath. I don't want to fight. Evelyn smiled faintly. Then don't fight. Just follow the rules. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything, the insults, the laughter, the way his mother smirked while I packed nothing but my keys, and the absurdity of it all that I, the one who saved them, had also unknowingly built their cage. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and took screenshots of every transaction tied to that loan. I made a folder on my desktop and named it Peace. By morning, I'd contacted the mortgage officer requesting verification of the latest payment status for tax documentation. She confirmed the last payment had bounced from his account. I thanked her and hung up. Then I wrote one line in my notebook. If peace is what he wanted, he's about to have plenty of it. 3 days later, a letter arrived at my new apartment, forwarded mail. It was from the county office notifying me as a guarantor of a pending lien review on the property. Standard procedure, but it meant the house was flagged. I folded the letter neatly, placed it under my coffee mug, and whispered to no one in particular, it begins. I didn't tell Evelyn yet. I didn't call anyone. I went to work like normal, checked patients, smiled when they said I looked calmer. But inside, there was a shift, not rage, not spite, something colder, cleaner. That night, as I locked the clinic doors, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Why did the bank call here? No name, but I didn't need one. I turned off the phone, dropped it in my bag, and walked to my car. The street was quiet, the air heavy with late summer heat. Revenge doesn't start with noise. It starts with stillness. A few days later, one of the nurses at work, Martha, showed me a video someone had posted from a neighborhood barbecue. I didn't even recognize the background until I saw the stone fence ours, my old house, and there they were. David, beer in hand, laughing with his mother beside him. Someone behind the camera said, "Where's your wife, man?" And David replied, without missing a beat, "She left. Couldn't handle real life." His mother added, "She was always dramatic. We're finally getting some peace." Martha looked embarrassed, like she wanted to apologize for showing it to me. I just said, "Don't worry. It's good to know they're happy." But inside that line echoed again, "We're finally getting some peace." Peace. That word used to sound like a soft thing, but when it comes from the mouth of someone who used you, it turns sharp. That night I met Evelyn again. She had the kind of calm face that makes you want to believe the world still makes sense. I told her about the video, about how everyone seemed so sure I was gone for good. She sipped her coffee, then said, "Let them underestimate you. It's easier that way." She handed me a small envelope. Inside were copies of the latest correspondence from the mortgage company. They've scheduled a review meeting. Apparently his payments have been inconsistent. If they can't verify his current solvency, they'll start the lien transfer procedure. I looked up at her. "You mean?" She nodded. "They'll contact you next." I didn't say much, just nodded slowly. For the rest of the evening, we talked about normal things, her dog, the new cafe that opened downtown. But the envelope sat between us like a loaded gun no one wanted to touch. The next morning, I decided to drive past the old neighborhood again. It wasn't about nostalgia. I just wanted to see. The maple trees were starting to turn. Kids rode bikes past the driveway where I used to plant tulips. My car idled by the curb as I watched David carry groceries inside. He looked thinner, maybe tired. His mother opened the door and called out something that made him flinch. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered the night he told me to leave, how calm he looked when he said it, like he was freeing himself from a burden. I drove away before they could see me. Later that week, an email from the bank arrived. The subject line read, "Attention co-borrower notification." I opened it and read the first sentence 3 times before it sank in. "We have detected multiple missed payments on the Matthews property account and are reviewing collateral ownership per your signed agreement." I didn't react. I just forwarded it to Evelyn with one line, "So it begins." That Friday, Martha invited me to dinner with her and her husband. They live not far from my old neighborhood. During dessert, her husband mentioned he'd heard that David might have to refinance again, because apparently his wife left him with some bills. I smiled politely. "Is that what they're saying?" He nodded. "Yeah, rumor is he's trying to sell the place before the bank gets to it." When I got home, I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. His Facebook was still public. There it was, a new post, a photo of him painting the living room. The caption, "Fresh Start." The irony almost made me laugh. I scrolled further down. A comment from his mother caught my eye. "This home will always belong to the Matthews family. No one can take it away from us." I took a screenshot, not out of spite, but instinct. Every word, every timestamp, it all mattered now. That night I wrote in my notebook again like I had since I left short notes, 1 per day. Day 34. They believe I'm gone. That's good. Day 35. Peace isn't real. It's just the space before consequences arrive. Evelyn called the next day. "You'll probably get a certified letter soon. Don't react when it comes. Just read it carefully." "What will it say?" I asked. "That the bank's investigating ownership status. They'll need your signature for confirmation. And Claire, once you sign, there's no going back." I walked to the window and looked out over the bakery across the street. People lined up for morning coffee, kids pressed against the glass to watch croissants bake. Life was moving forward, steady and normal. Mine had paused, but it didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like control. 2 nights later, I got a text from a number I hadn't saved. "Heard you're doing well without us." No name, but I didn't need one. His mother loved her late-night jabs. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened that same folder on my computer piece and added one more document, the email from the bank. Then I closed the lid, made myself tea, and watched the streetlights flicker outside. When you stop reacting, people mistake it for weakness. What they never realize is that silence is the sound of the trap closing. By Sunday evening, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to warn him. I wasn't going to give him a chance to explain. If he wanted peace, he'd get it cold, legal, and absolute. I tore out one page from my notebook and wrote in careful, even letters, 2 days. That's all it said. No explanation. Just a countdown only I understood. And for the first time since walking out that night, I slept straight through until morning. It was a Tuesday morning when the call came. I was at the clinic reviewing a patient chart when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, the kind that makes you sit down without knowing why. Mrs. Matthews, this is Lydia from Horizon Federal. I'm calling regarding the Matthews property account. We're conducting a verification review concerning loan guarantorship and ownership records. For a moment, the words didn't register. Then she said the sentence that made my stomach tighten. We noticed discrepancies in payment authorization. You were listed as the primary guarantor. We'll need your acknowledgement to proceed with reassignment documentation. I asked what that meant, trying to keep my tone even. It means, she said gently, if the primary borrower has failed to comply, collateral interest may revert to the guarantor. That's you, Mrs. Matthews. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there in silence staring at my phone. I should have felt angry or scared. Instead, what I felt was clarity. When my shift ended, I drove straight to Evelyn's office. She worked out of a small law firm downtown, tucked between a pharmacy and an insurance agency. When she saw me, she didn't ask questions. She just closed the blinds and said, "Tell me." I repeated the conversation word for word. She nodded, slowly pulled a stack of documents from her drawer, and said, "Claire, this is the moment you decide whether you want to act or stay invisible. Once you sign these forms, the process begins. It's not about revenge, it's about truth." I took the pen but didn't sign yet. What happens to him, I asked. If he hasn't been paying, the house will be frozen until the reassignment is complete. He'll get notified, but not until the lien transfer starts, usually within 48 hours. 2 days. I thought of that note in my notebook, 2 days. I finally signed. My hand didn't shake. Evelyn watched me carefully. "You okay?" I nodded. "He told me to leave so he could have peace. I'm just giving it to him legally." She smiled faintly. "You always did have good timing." That evening, I drove back to my apartment. It was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the table, and stared at the city lights outside my window. There's a kind of peace that feels earned, like an exhale after years of holding your breath. That's what it felt like. The next day, I received an email confirming receipt of my authorization. Attached was a digital copy of the reassignment form. It read, "Lien transfer initiated. Property under review for collateral reassignment to guarantor Claire Matthews." The timestamp 9:37 a.m. I forwarded it to Evelyn with one line, "Done." I went to work as usual, treated patients, updated records, smiled when people thanked me. Nobody would have guessed what was happening. That's the thing about revenge at this age. It's quiet, methodical, and often looks like nothing at all. By the following morning, the second call came, this time from Lydia again. "Mrs. Matthews, as part of standard procedure, the borrower has been notified of the reassignment process. You may receive correspondence confirming final verification within 48 hours. I thanked her again, polite and calm. Then, almost as an afterthought, she said, "I hope everything works out for you. Cases like this, they don't happen often." I smiled into the phone. No, they don't. That evening, I drove by the old house one more time. Not to gloat, just to see. His car was in the driveway. The porch light was on. Through the window, I could see his mother moving back and forth in the living room, waving her hands as if arguing. David stood by the counter phone in hand, shoulders tense. Even from across the street, I could tell the conversation wasn't going well. I stayed there only a minute before driving off. The road felt endless, the kind of stretch where you can see the sky melting into the horizon. I rolled down the window and let the air in crisp, cool, almost gentle. It reminded me of the first night I left, except this time I wasn't the one running. When I got home, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, the same seat where I'd watched countless sunsets alone. I opened my notebook and wrote, "Day 41, peace always costs someone something. This time he'll pay the bill." The next morning, at exactly 8:12 a.m., an email came from Horizon Federal titled Notice of Collateral Freeze. It was official. The property was under review, all transactions suspended. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Somewhere across town, he was probably pacing, calling, demanding answers. His mother would be yelling. The bank's voicemail would be full. And I would be here, calm, quiet, drinking my tea. For the first time in a long while, the word peace finally meant something. 2 days. That's how long it took for everything to collapse. I was finishing a late shift when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. Claire. The voice snapped, David's voice, ragged, panicked. What the hell did you do? The bank froze the house. They're saying there's some kind of lien transfer. What did you sign? I didn't raise my voice. You should talk to your loan officer. Don't play stupid with me, he shouted. They said your name's on everything. You were supposed to take your name off. I didn't sign anything removing it, I said. Guess that was your job. There was a pause, the kind where you can hear someone realizing they've run out of moves. Then came the last words he managed before hanging up. You ruined us. I set the phone down on the counter and stared at it for a long time. Outside the city was quiet. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. At 11:23 p.m., a text came through from an unknown number. I didn't need to check who it was. Your mother must be so proud. Destroying a family that helped you. I typed out a reply, then deleted it. No point in feeding the noise. Instead, I opened my window, let the cool air in, and listened. Somewhere a train passed through the edge of town, that low, distant rumble that sounds like time moving on without you. The next morning, Evelyn called. You okay? I laughed softly. Depends how you define okay. She chuckled. They've called my office twice. Guess they finally read the documents. What did you tell them? The truth. That all transactions followed procedure, and that the guarantor exercised her legal rights. Good, I said quietly. She hesitated. Claire, do you want this to go public? Once the lien transfer posts the property record becomes public information. People will know. I thought about it for a while. Let it be public. They didn't mind embarrassing me when I was the one paying their bills. That afternoon, I drove to a park on the edge of town. I sat in my car with a sandwich and my notebook. Wrote one line, day 43, revenge is quieter than regret. Then I went home, turned on some music from the 70s, and cleaned my apartment. It's funny when your life explodes, the most comforting thing in the world is the smell of lemon-scented cleaner and the sound of a vacuum. At 6:00 p.m., I got another call this time from a number I didn't recognize, but already expected. It was Lydia from Horizon Federal again. Mrs. Matthews. I'm required to inform you that the property reassignment has been confirmed. The Matthews residence is now legally under your name, pending final audit. I almost whispered, understood. Then she added, I also need to note that the current occupants have 48 hours to vacate before repossession proceedings begin. 48 hours. I didn't smile. I didn't even move. I just sat there holding the phone, listening to her voice fade into the end of the call. When the line went dead, I put the phone down and looked out the window. The bakery across the street was closing. The lights in the upstairs apartment flickered off one by one. For a long moment, I just watched the stillness like the calm before a storm. Later that night, around 10:30, Evelyn texted me. He's called the firm again. Sounded shaken. I think they finally realized it's real. I replied, he wanted peace. He got it. The next morning, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Then another call, then another, then silence. By noon, a message arrived, Mom, we have to leave this house. Now. I stared at the screen, that one line blinking back at me. I could almost picture it, his mother shouting orders, grabbing whatever she could, him pacing the living room, shouting into his phone, as the world he built on my back fell apart. I closed my eyes, breathed in deeply, and whispered, 2 days. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was something colder, the kind of calm that comes when you finally balanced a scale no one thought you could touch. That night I sat on the balcony drinking tea and watching the rain streak down the city lights. Somewhere across town, the house that once held my life was now emptying itself of theirs. I didn't plan to take it back. I didn't want it. But I wanted them to know that what they called peace had a cost. A few hours later, Evelyn texted one last time, "It's done. The property's officially listed under your name. They can contest it, but they won't win." I replied with just 2 words, "Thank you." Then I wrote the final line for the Day 45. I didn't take their house. I just took back my silence. And for the first time in months, I turned off my phone, crawled into bed, and slept. No dreams, no noise, just peace, the kind I chose. The morning after the text, "Mom, we have to leave this house." Now I woke before my alarm. No panic. Just a steady beat in my chest, like my body had finally caught up with the facts. I brewed coffee and opened my notebook. Day 46. Don't gloat. Close the loops. That became the list for the Day Utilities Insurance County Tax Office USPS. I wasn't going to let anything dangle. I logged into the electric company portal and moved the account out of the joint profile and into my name, effective the reassignment date. Same with water and gas. I scheduled a final read for the meters. The system asked me to pick a window for access. I picked it, then typed in the notes, field current occupants vacating. Contact owner me, if entry denied. Click, confirmed. Next was insurance. The agent recognized my voice. We'd talked 100 times when David forgot to pay. "Hi, Claire," she said softly. "I saw the file change come through." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I answered. "Please update the policyholder to my name only and remove all secondary contacts." She paused. "You want to keep coverage on a vacant property for now," I said. "Short term. Understood." "I'll add a vacancy endorsement." I thanked her. She didn't try to make small talk. Good agents know when silence is a kindness. At lunch, I walked to the post office and filed a permanent change of address. The clerk stamped the form, slid it back, and said, "You're all set, Ms. Matthews." Such a simple sentence for something that felt like a final door clicking shut. On my way back, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. Claire. David's voice, flat now, not angry, empty. "We're out." I let a breath go. "Okay." "There were officers here when the notice posted," he said. "Not to arrest anybody, just to keep the peace." He was the one who emphasized the word, but there was no bite left. We packed what we could. Mom's at my sister's. "I hope you find something stable," I said. It surprised me that I meant it. He waited like he wanted me to say more. When I didn't, he said, "You didn't have to do it this way." "I followed the paperwork," I said. "That's all." The line was quiet for a second. "Right," he said, and hung up. I stared at the phone, then placed its screen down on the counter. The bakery bell across the street chimed as someone came in for a late sandwich. The world kept going. Evelyn texted, "Do you want me there when you do the walkthrough?" "Yes," I wrote back. 2 p.m. We met in front of the house. The driveway looked smaller than I remembered. Funny how places shrink when they don't belong to you anymore. A county sticker was taped to the front window. The porch had a scuff mark where something heavy had been dragged. Evelyn unlocked the door. "You ready?" The air inside was stale shampoo, old candle, a hint of fried oil that had seeped into the curtains. The living room was almost bare. A couple of nails where pictures used to hang. In the kitchen, the spice rack was gone, but the sticky outline remained. The refrigerator hummed like it always had, loyal to no one. We moved room by room, no theatrics. Utilities on no water leaks, no broken windows. In the bedroom, the mattress was gone. The closet held 2 bent hangers and a dry cleaning ticket with my last name on it. I took it, folded it into my pocket, evidence of a life that never made it to the register. In the guest room, the room I slept in. The last few months, I found a small box under the bed, 3 pharmacy receipts, and a thank you card from a patient who'd left chocolates at the clinic. I sat on the carpet and read the card again, the cramped handwriting. "You listened." That's all it said. I put the card back in the box and left it by the door. Some things you don't throw away, even if they look like trash. Evelyn checked the meter numbers against her list. "We're good," she said. "You can change the locks." "I will," I said. "Not today." We locked up and stood on the porch. Across the street, the neighbor Mrs. Hernandez, 3 houses down, pretended to water her roses while squinting our way. I gave a small wave. She hesitated, then waved back and called out, "You okay, honey? I'm fine," I said, and meant it. She lowered the hose. "He told folks you ran out on him." I shrugged. People say things. She looked at the county sticker, then at me. People learn. On the drive back, Evelyn asked, "What do you want to do with it?" "Sell," I said. "Quickly, cash buyer, preferably." She nodded. "I'll have our broker draft a listing. We can mark it as is. No staging, no open house circus. Good." That night I sat on my balcony with a bowl of soup and called my brother in Ohio. We don't talk often, different lives, different coasts, but he picks up when it matters. I told him the headline version. He sighed. "I always liked you with him, Claire. I thought he calmed you down." "He did," I said. "Until he didn't." "You need anything?" "No," I said. "I'm okay." He paused. "Proud of you?" It landed like a soft blanket over a cold chair. The next morning at the clinic, the ladies at reception had already seen the neighborhood chatter online. Small towns do that soft gossip that slips through like wind under a door. No one asked me directly. They brought me extra charts to sign and a paper cup of peach tea, the kindness pressed against my ribs. It's strange what holds you together. By noon, the broker called. "We have 2 investor offers and one from a young family who wants to try to use an FHA loan," she said. "The investors are lower, but faster. The family's full ask, but contingent and slow." "Go with fast," I said. I didn't know the house a sentimental ending. I signed the acceptance that afternoon. "We'll close in 10 days, the broker said. We'll handle the key exchange with a lockbox. You don't have to be there. Thank you." After work, I drove past the old street one last time. There was a new sign in the yard. "For sale owner, broker." Someone had tied a plastic ribbon to the post, and it snapped in the wind like a small flag. The windows were dark, no porch light, no car. Just a box with walls around it waiting to become someone else's problem, someone else's peace. I parked around the corner and walked to the end of the block. The Hernandez roses glowed bright red against the fence. I could hear the faint buzz of a lawnmower from 3 streets over. As I turned back, a white sedan slowed near the driveway, then moved on. Curious traffic. I kept walking. That night, my phone lit up with a new message from an unknown number. Blunt, graceless. "You think you won." No punctuation at the end, like the sender ran out of breath. I turned the phone face down again and watched the ceiling fan blades turn. I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a homeowner doing paperwork. Before bed, I wrote, Day 48. Aftermath is just errands with feelings. Then I laughed at myself and added close loops. No speeches. 2 days later, I met Evelyn near the courthouse to sign a final set of disclosures. On our way out, we passed a corkboard where they post auctions and bank-owned notices. A printed sheet caught my eye from a different case. Bank-owned property in heavy block letters. An old address. Not mine. But the words sat there like a memory of how this could have gone if I'd waited, if I'd begged, if I'd let them write my name out of the story. Evelyn followed my eyes. "You okay, I am," I said. "I'm not here for that board." We stepped into the afternoon. The sun was sharp, the kind that makes everything look honest. Evelyn offered lunch. I told her I wanted to walk. She didn't argue. Back at the apartment, the bakery smell drifted up warm and sweet. I made a note to buy a loaf and share it with Bill and his wife later. I put my keys in the bowl by the door, poured a glass of water, and stood at the window. Somewhere across town, a house that used to be mine was about to belong to no one I knew. I didn't need to see it again. The point wasn't the walls. The point was that I wasn't inside them explaining myself to anyone. I closed the notebook. Loops closed. No speeches. 3 weeks passed. The sale closed faster than I expected. A wire hit my account one morning while I was drinking coffee, a clean, quiet transaction that didn't need an audience. Evelyn texted funds cleared. "You're officially free." Free. The word sat strangely on my tongue. I wasn't sure what freedom felt like anymore, but I knew what silence did. It steadied you. I took a few days off work. No big plans. I walked by the river, bought myself a new pair of shoes, got my car washed. Life looked the same, but I wasn't the same woman who'd stood in that kitchen, hearing him say he needed peace. Martha at the clinic told me she'd heard he left town. Apparently, he and his mother had moved in with his sister somewhere in South Carolina. "They say he's trying to start over," she said gently. "Good," I answered. "He should." There wasn't bitterness in it, just fact. People rebuild even after losing what they thought was theirs. That's life. One night, I sat on my balcony looking at the city lights below. The hum of cars drifted up faintly. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost inside my own story. I took out my notebook, the same one where I'd written every small note, every quiet step. I flipped through it slowly. So many short lines, so much restraint between them. Then I wrote Day 72. Revenge doesn't scream. It whispers, and the world listens anyway. The next day, Evelyn invited me to lunch to celebrate the closing. We went to a small cafe with brick walls and black coffee, strong enough to wake a ghost. She raised her glass. To clarity, she said. I smiled, to silence. We talked about work, about her son graduating, about the things grown women talk about when they're finally done, apologizing for wanting peace of their own. As we were leaving, she asked, "Do you ever think you'll tell him how close he came to losing everything earlier?" I shook my head. He already knows. That's enough. That afternoon, I went home, opened the file on my laptop labeled Peace, and deleted it. Every document, every screenshot, every email. I emptied the recycle bin. It felt right. The proof wasn't for him, it was for me, and I no longer needed proof. Later that week, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized his handwriting. Just 3 lines, I'm sorry. I didn't understand what you were carrying. I hope you're at peace now. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer without rereading it. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he didn't. Either way, it wasn't mine to answer. That night, the city went dark for a few minutes, a power outage that swept across downtown. From my balcony, I could see hundreds of small windows go black, then slowly flicker back to life. It looked like a heartbeat restarting after a long pause. I thought about how much energy people waste trying to be heard, when sometimes the quiet says more. The next morning at the clinic, a new patient, older woman, kind eyes, told me she'd recently lost her husband. 47 years, she said softly. He wasn't cruel, just careless. You know what I mean? I nodded. I do, she smiled. Then you know forgiveness doesn't always mean letting them back in. That stayed with me all day. When I got home, I made a cup of chamomile tea and sat at my kitchen table, tracing my finger along the rim of the mug. The air smelled like rain. For the first time, I felt something close to gratitude, not for what happened, but for surviving it, without becoming someone I didn't recognize. People talk about revenge like it's a weapon. It isn't. It's a mirror. You hold it up and they see themselves, maybe for the first time. Before bed, I opened my notebook again and wrote the last entry, day 90. Silence is not surrender. It's evidence. Then I closed it for good. The next morning, I walked to the bakery downstairs. Bill, the landlord, waved. You look lighter, kiddo. Guess I finally slept, I said. Whatever it is, keep doing it, he laughed. I ordered a small loaf, warm and crusty, and carried it home, wrapped in brown paper. The smell filled the apartment, simple and clean. Peace, I realized, wasn't something you earned from others. It was something you took back one quiet step at a time. It's been almost a year now. People still ask where I went after I left him, like I disappeared into thin air. But really, I just lived. Quietly. I still work at the same clinic. I still see the same patients, drink the same burnt coffee, and drive the same 10-year-old car. But everything feels different, not because my world changed, but because I did. Every morning, I water a small plant on my kitchen windowsill. It was a gift from Martha the nurse, who showed me that barbecue video months ago. It's a peace lily. She didn't realize the irony, but I did. It's still alive, still growing. Last week, Evelyn and I had dinner. She told me the young couple who bought the house, moved in, repainted, and planted roses along the fence. Looks better than it did before, she said. I smiled. Good. Let it have better memories. After dinner, she asked, Do you ever regret it? I thought about that for a moment. No, I said. Not the way it ended. Just the way I let it go on for so long. Evelyn smiled. That's not regret, Claire. That's perspective. When I got home, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea and watched the city below, all those little lights flickering in windows, every one of them a story. Somewhere out there, David was probably building a new life, telling himself his version of the truth. Maybe he blamed me, maybe he didn't. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. Revenge, I've learned, isn't about destruction. It's about restoration, taking back the space someone once occupied inside you and locking it behind a door they'll never open again. The night air was cool. The peace lily beside me caught the wind and swayed gently like it was nodding. I opened my old notebook again, not to write, but to tear out one page. The first one, the one that said 2 days. I folded it carefully and dropped it into the small flame of a candle. It curled and burned the edges, turning amber before collapsing into ash. That was my last piece of unfinished business. The phone buzzed once, a text from an unknown number. Heard you sold the house. Hope you're happy. I stared at it for a while, then typed back, I am. Then I turned off the phone. The world didn't end. No music swelled. Just the steady hum of the refrigerator and the faint laughter of people outside the bakery. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt safe inside my own silence. When I went to bed that night, I left the balcony door open. The wind moved through the room like a whisper, soft but sure. I thought about all the women I'd met at the clinic, the ones who stayed too long, gave too much, and forgot what their own names sounded like when said kindly. If they were listening now, I'd tell them this. You don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes leaving quietly is the loudest thing you'll ever do. And if you're ever told to move out and live somewhere else, remember peace is not his to give. It's yours to reclaim. So breathe, step outside, and when the silence comes, let it stay. Because peace, real peace, the kind that can't be taken away, begins the moment you stop explaining yourself to people who never listened. If my story found you tonight, take it as a sign that you can start again at any age, on any day, and still build something beautiful from what they thought they broke. So share it. Tell someone who needs to hear that leaving isn't failure, it's freedom. And if you ever forget that, just whisper it back to yourself. Peace is mine.